The Galactic Empire was the successor to both the Galactic Republic and Separatist Alliance, and was responsible for putting a galaxy that had spent the last 3 years tearing itself apart through the Clone Wars back together again. And although many did suffer because of this, it would be the ex-Separatists who would feel the brunt of this authoritarian regime. Now, we've talked a lot before about the Empire's engagements with Separatists. For example, in Legends, where the Empire dealt with Separatist refugees by literally dropping them from a carrier transport to kill them so they didn't have to worry about rehoming them. However, in canon things are a lot less clear, so I've put together what I would consider to be a pretty accurate idea of how I believe the Empire was dealing with Separatists. Now, upon ending the war officially, the newly formed Empire undoubtedly hit hard. Any Separatist combatants were quickly wiped out. Without the support of the droid army, they were pretty powerless compared to the battle-hardened clones. And we have to imagine that the clones actually butchered countless innocents in the process of killing Separatist combatants. In the weeks following Order 66, it must have been a bloodbath. Now, one of the biggest indications we have about how Separatists were treated under the Empire is in the actions of Wilhuth Tarkin on the world of Antar 4, in an event that would be dubbed the Antar Atrocity, a very appropriate name. Within a year of the Emperor's ascension, Tarkin was sent to Antar 4 to make an example of the world, which was a strong Separatist supporter during the Clone Wars. This was to ensure that it was made very clear to the rest of the galaxy, particularly ex-Separatist worlds, what would happen if they didn't toe the line, and Tarkin did just that, in classic brutal fashion. He essentially went to Antar 4 and began a campaign of terror. Anyone, and I mean anyone, the Empire could even have suspected of holding any disloyalty to the Empire was arrested, held to a sham trial, and executed. It's important to note that Tarkin didn't really spend any time trying to separate Imperial loyalists from ex-Separatists, nor Antar 4's native population to, say, people who were just visiting. So, honestly, even if you were just visiting the world, and you were even a firm Imperial supporter, you may have found yourself being shot at by a bunch of clones simply because you were there. Now this sent a very clear message to the galaxy. However, it did spark outrage within the Senate, and Tarkin had to go away from the spotlight for a little while and went and managed the Death Star construction. Now, despite this atrocity taking place, you may think that from there the Empire worked on uniting the galaxy. However, this doesn't seem like it was the case, and it didn't get much better for the Separatists. They really did remain the Empire's scapegoat for nearly everything. It's my belief that the Empire will have been quick to essentially economically ruin any ex-CIS worlds. In the Clone Wars, the Separatist Alliance built countless factories, mines, and other important assets on their loyal worlds, and realistically, from the Empire's perspective, this could never stand. Palpatine wanted the ex-Separatists essentially powerless, and letting them control valuable resources was just not an option. I believe that majority of factories will have been disassembled, and the important parts will have been given to Imperial loyalists and companies, who generally were supporting of the Empire, such as Kuat drive yards. And anything that could not be repossessed by Imperial thugs will simply have been destroyed. And as far as natural resources, such as mines and farms, it's very likely that the Imperials simply seized them and took direct control over them, bringing in their own workforces from off-world, mostly humans. This will have ultimately led to countless civilians being displaced and creating a refugee crisis. And it's very important to know this, but under the Empire, refugees did not last long. I mean, there was pirates, slavers, crime factions, and the Empire itself. They were easy pickings, and they were absolutely brutalized under the Empire. It's also important to remember that the Imperials did not like aliens, and surprise, aliens were a very affluent force in the Separatist Alliance. I mean, if you look at the Separatist Council, it's basically all aliens. For this reason, the Empire nurtured a very inhospitable association between aliens and Separatists. Essentially, this created the link to many people that if you were an alien, you were probably also a Separatist. And either these people would hate you because you're a Separatist, and a lot of people blame the Separatists for basically all the problems in the galaxy, or two, they wouldn't necessarily hate you, but they would be quite apathetic and not want to associate with you because it brought unwanted attention from the Empire. And under a terror state like the Empire, when nobody was above suspicion, it's very easy to see how Imperials would see somebody who maybe hung around with aliens too much and instantly make the leap to Separatist sympathizer, especially if they had a quota to meet. These acts of cruelty towards the Separatists didn't just die out after the first couple of years post the Clone Wars, it went on and on. Even loyal Imperials who had spent most of their adult life under the Empire, but just so happened to hail from a world that was with the Separatist Alliance during the Clone Wars, they were effectively shut out of Imperial society. Imperial academies, for example, rarely took on recruits from Separatist worlds as to keep their chances of sabotage low. Realistically, even just having the unfortunate association with anything separatist was going to be enough to basically ruin your life for the next 2 decades of Imperial rule. And hell, even if you were accepted into, say, the Imperial Navy or Army, your association with anything separatist would be used against you to deny your progressions through the ranks, and you would probably end up being sent to a far outer rim world to be used as cannon fodder by some moth. Now, you may be thinking, well, this is pretty clear that the Empire was running a terror state and treating these ex-separatists, or just people who were somehow associated with separatists, very unfairly, and surely people spoke out against this. However, this isn't really the case. Majority of the Senate in particular, the only people who could really ever even stand a chance of holding Palpatine accountable, were his loyal followers who had fought the Separatists during the Clone Wars, and those old grudges didn't go away overnight. This is the thing, the Clone Wars was such a massive event that literally it continued to shape the galaxy all the way into and after the Galactic Empire. The Separatists, to many, will always be the enemy of the people. I would argue that in fact majority of the slaves and refugees etc. that we see during the age of the Galactic Empire were likely in some way associated with something inherently separatist, be that species, homeworld, or just happening to be affiliated with these things. But this was Palpatine's design. By allowing his people to look down on the perceived evil separatist threat, it allowed him to basically do what he wanted and go unchecked. But what do you guys think? How did the Empire treat ex-separatists? And why did Palpatine insist on this? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to like, share and sub, as it is really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. I do quickly want to apologise for the lack of videos over the last few days. It's quite busy at the moment. I'm currently looking for work as well as doing my dissertation, but I am going to continue to try to get videos out quite regularly. Also, if you do want to keep up to date, don't forget to subscribe and tick the bell for regular updates, and follow me on Twitter at The Lore Guy. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video and you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.